So let's get into the subtleties of knowledge, intellect, experience, and wisdom. There's a tendency to consider these things as items on the supermarket shelf, all equally valuable. For the average man immersed in materialism, this may be the case. But for spiritual warriors who seek to pierce the surface, these things need to be reconciled and put in their proper place. So, how can something be said to be truly known? If knowledge is strictly intellectualized, it is not known, but only at best memorized. This is why it is easily forgotten, for without experience that translates knowledge into wisdom, it is just empty data that has no way to find firm ground to stand on. So you cannot read or be told something and expect to know it. This is why book smarts is overrated. Book smarts equates into trivia. It is useful in school, but outside of school, knowledge alone won't suffice. In the real world, we have to know what we are doing, and a bunch of trivia won't cut it. It might be useful if you are a contestant on a game show or with your daily crossword puzzle, but beyond that, it won't have much use. So a high IQ and a giant intellect doesn't mean much if the knowledge isn't applied. Without applied knowledge, you are essentially just a walking encyclopedia. When we apply knowledge, it means it is being incorporated with experience, and with experience comes wisdom. When one has wisdom, then it can be said that they truly know something. As an example, to know soccer, one has to play soccer. Memorizing all the rules, being a lifetime fan of the sport, or having someone describe what it's like to play soccer doesn't translate into the experience of soccer. You may know of soccer, but you don't know soccer directly. Now, some people may say that they know all this already. So am I stating the obvious? I think not, and it can't be overstated, at least as it applies to the realm of philosophy, an area of engagement most frequented by spiritual warriors. It's noteworthy because in the arena of philosophy, 95% of the philosophical occupants are those who contrive arguments based on things they have absolutely zero experience with. Religion heads and science buffs are the prime examples of this. Religion, by default, doesn't have an experiential bone in its body. This is why religion shouldn't even be granted a seat at the table of philosophy. There is nothing worse than an authoritative, arrogant fool who makes arguments based on what he thinks are irrefutable truths because they are written in a book. This is why I don't know why people even waste time in discourse with religion. It's like arguing with a robot. Any fool can play that part. You don't need credentials, experience, knowledge, intellect, or wisdom, just the ability to absorb and regurgitate. This produces situations of extreme cognitive dissonance where 17-year-old kids feel qualified to pontificate and tell older men of experience and wisdom how things are. It's a joke that's not even funny. But even an older religious person who has a ton of religious experience is no different. Any experience they have is based in rituals, memorizing scriptures, reciting mythology, or playing power games of authority and subservience. This is, in philosophical terms, kindergarten caliber junk that shouldn't even be given a platform. It appeals to the lowest common denominator, meaning the majority, but that's even more reason to ignore it. To engage it is to validate it and give it importance, both of which it doesn't deserve. Some people feel compelled to address it because they want to free religious people's minds, but it's a lost cause. These people are irreversibly brainwashed. You'd have better luck converting meat eaters into vegetarians. So religion shouldn't even be allowed to participate in philosophical dialogue. But of course they are, and this is due to the invitations from their diametrically opposed counterpart, the science buff. And yes, I call them buffs because very few of them have any scientific experience or background, which makes them dogmatists of a different kind. This galls people, and they wind up trying to make some kind of point with questions like, so I have to be a lawyer to argue law, or I have to be a politician to argue politics. No, but at least you need some experience in the field of interest you are arguing. Otherwise, you are talking out of your ass and making weak arguments. It's like if two architects were arguing over a blueprint, would it be useful for a layman off the street to come and put his 2 cents in? Sometimes an unbiased outside opinion can be beneficial, but it's just an opinion, not an argumentation that would require experience. So it's another unfunny joke when unexperienced science buffs speak so arrogantly and authoritatively about something they have zero experience with. And what's funny is the actual scientists, the ones with the knowledge and experience, are far more open-minded, imaginative, and versatile than the science buffs who try to wield science like a sword. And they wield this sword blindly, for knowledge alone is blind. Experience creates sight. Now, let's not get the wrong idea and assume that this doesn't also apply to spiritualists, because it most certainly does. It's just as big a problem with spirituality as it is with religion and science. You'll get lots of guys who have studied a lot of Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, and various other Eastern philosophies, and suddenly they feel qualified to throw their hats into the ring and speak authoritatively. They will point to something and want you to look at their finger, not at what they're pointing at. They will make a big deal about the knowledge, teachers, and teachings, all things that people often get stuck on in their quote-unquote quest for enlightenment. The knowledge of Eastern philosophy is the result of the illuminating experience, and so it comes to be known proper afterward, not before. Studying it beforehand can actually lead to complications, for it sets up expectations, concepts, beliefs, and general apprehension that actually serve to maintain delusion. Experiencing enlightenment is really all about reductionism. So filling the mind with a bunch of knowledge concerning the philosophy surrounding enlightenment is actually counterproductive. We are already filled up with enough junk as it is. So to add a bunch of more junk about spirituality and enlightenment will only make it worse. There's actually no need to study the philosophical spiritual wisdom at all before enlightenment. After experiencing enlightenment, you will know it all empirically without having studied a thing. So before the experience of enlightenment, one should be only concerned with the practices of detachment, the unlearning, deprogramming, unconditioning, disassociation, and unidentification process, all the various avenues of deconstruction, subtraction, and reduction. This is the only way to experience enlightenment. It cannot be told, described, or explained. It is ineffable. So to experience it has nothing to do with knowledge. It has everything to do with getting outside of oneself. Meditation, selflessness, not doings, quieting the mind, remembering death, dropping the ego, avoiding routines, lucid dreaming, sensory deprivation, illogical nonsense, dropping the past, staying in the now, and psychoactive episodes are all examples of solid practices of detachment. These practices can lead to the experience of enlightenment, and with the experience of enlightenment, then comes the knowledge and wisdom. So what good is it to pursue knowledge beforehand? You may have a ton of knowledge, but without experience, what do you really know? What does the knowledge you've acquired indicate to you? When it comes to this existence, there are people who think they know what it's all about. This is the majority of people. They have theories, philosophies, science, religion, and different individual meanings placed on life. But of course, how could anyone really know what's going on? Of course, no one knows what's really going on. At best, they may have a few pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, but no more than that. Based on a few clues, people build up their beliefs and then subsequently they shut down. By definition, when something is filled up, nothing more can be added. Just like an overstuffed suitcase, nothing else can be put inside of it. So if there ever is something of benefit to be recognized, it will be missed. There simply isn't enough room for it to become an item of consideration for awareness to become aware of. Thoughts, concepts, and beliefs then become an oppressive burden that cement a person down. And of course, a person doesn't even see this. They are actually quite comfortable in their shackles and view them as their closest friends. These people are profoundly lost in a complex maze. Then there are people who think that they don't know what it's all about. These people are more uncommon. With so much ideologies and theologies surrounding an already complex web of details that comprise the reality, they become overwhelmed and come to the conclusion that they really don't know anything. But of course, no one can really say that they don't know anything. Of course, everybody surely knows something. These people may have acquired a few pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, but don't draw any conclusions from it. So with some limited knowledge, they don't build up beliefs and subsequently remain closed. But just because someone doesn't have beliefs doesn't necessarily mean that they don't believe that there is nothing to believe in. In the back of their minds, they have suspicions and inclinations that there is truth and something to figure out. It's just that they are unwilling to commit to anything or resign themselves to the notion that they can never figure it out. By definition, when something is so guarded, it cannot be accessed. Just like a half-full locked suitcase. There may be room, but since it is guarded, nothing can be put in or taken out. So if there is anything of benefit to be recognized, it will be warded off. There is simply no way for it to reach awareness before it is attacked with doubt and skepticism, and no way for doubt and skepticism to be released. Doubt, skepticism, and non-commitment then become overprotective guardians that insulate a person from everything. Naturally, a person doesn't see this either and is at ease in their cocoon and view it as most ideal. These people are partially lost in the complex maze. Then there are people who know there is nothing to know or not know concerning what it's all about. These people are rare. That all concepts, thoughts, beliefs, objects, realities, and phenomena are all equally empty and without substance. Different degrees of knowledge and ignorance have no significance. One jigsaw piece is as good as any other because they never add up to anything. Even a completed jigsaw puzzle as a whole is but one jigsaw piece in an even larger puzzle. There is nothing to know, nothing to figure out, nothing to believe, nothing to doubt. By definition, when something is empty and open, anything can enter, but nothing can take root. Just like an empty suitcase with no lid, things can be added, but they cannot be contained. So if there ever is something of benefit to be recognized, it will be seen. There is room for it to become an item of consideration for awareness to become aware of. Thoughts, concepts, beliefs, doubts, skepticism, and non-commitments are as they should be, mere simple tools. And so they do not hold a person down or insulate them. And this is recognizable and employed with detachment. These people have a bird's eye view of the maze. So it's equally deluded and foolish to think that one can know or figure out all the complex details, or that one cannot know or cannot figure out all the complex details. There is nothing to know or figure out, or not know or not figure out in the first place. At all times they are only ever appearances, nothing more or less. We don't have to accept them or reject them. Whether fluid or concrete, they come and go. They arise, then fade away. They manifest from the source and then return to source. The only complication that ever crops up is when attachments are formed to that which appears and disappears. This is when a person becomes tossed around in a storm of sensations. It solidifies awareness into a dense form that is the necessary prerequisite to attach to these dense appearances. And all at once, just like that, illusion of separation is born, and hence the delusion begins. All of this can be avoided by knowing there is nothing to know. You are witnessing the comings and goings of empty, unsubstantial abstractions of imaginations, and there is nothing to know about them. Just witness them pass and give no quarter to curiosity. If you are curious, you will think there is something to know about these appearances beyond appearance, and then you will be drawn in. Once you are drawn in, details of the appearances will snag you, and then suddenly there will be things to know. Once there are things to know, you are ensnared and entrapped in illusions of appearances. And what is there to know in the details of an appearance? An appearance is an appearance, and that's all you need to know about appearances. To seek to know anything else will only lure you into meaningless yet mesmerizing details that subsequently serve to make one forget that the appearance is only an appearance. So what good is knowledge if it leads one into ignorance? There is wisdom in the adage, "Seek and ye shall find." Look closely into an appearance and you will find details that will lead to even more details that will lead to even more details. This is the substance of what we call knowledge. But if the quest for knowledge leads to a prison, then what good is the knowledge? Especially since the knowledge has done just the opposite of what we suppose knowledge is used for. So seeking knowledge doesn't lead to any kind of enlightenment or spiritual awakening. In fact, it leads one deeper into delusion. About the only thing knowledge might be useful for is if one has already been sucked into delusion by seeking knowledge, then certain knowledge might be used as a tool for finding the way back out. But this is tricky because one has to be able to discern between a very small amount of useful knowledge from a vast sea of useless knowledge. And even if one can discern this knowledge, the knowledge alone won't do the work. If it can be employed correctly as a tool, then it might be useful, but only if one can resist attaching to it and be able to discard it without hesitation when the time is right. This would be the knowledge concerning the ways of detachment, but employing it correctly has nothing to do with learning, thinking, doing, or believing. It's a pointless round trip back to where you started that would better to be avoided altogether. Seeking knowledge only to discover there is nothing to know, then having to use knowledge to find the way back to the unknown. If there is nothing to know of any real substance, then there is nothing to seek. The only thing you might end up knowing is that appearances are empty and passing. But you already knew this before you forgot it by seeking to know something. So you're only seeking to know something that you already know. If you already know it, you need not seek it. Appearances are empty, passing, and unsubstantial. Do not seek anything in them. Just watch them come and go.